In 2026, the global airline industry is on track to post a record $41 billion in profit. That sounds like an industry printing money. But divide that record profit by the number of people who actually flew, and the number that comes out the other side is $7.90. That is the entire profit an airline makes, on average, for flying you anywhere on Earth, less than the cost of a large coffee and a pastry. The industry's own director general has pointed out that Apple makes more money selling a single iPhone case than an airline makes flying an entire passenger. So here is the real question this video is built around. If flying planes barely makes any money at all, how is this a $41 billion industry in the first place? The answer is that increasingly, airlines aren't really in the business of flying people. They're in the business of selling currency to banks, and the planes are almost a side effect.
To understand this, you have to stop thinking of an airline as a transportation company and start thinking of it as two businesses stapled together: a flight operator and a currency printer. The flight operator is the part everyone sees: the gates, the crews, the fuel bills, the maintenance hangars. This part of the business is brutal. Fuel alone eats up roughly a third of an airline's total costs, and even in a record year, the entire industry keeps less than 4 cents of every revenue dollar as profit. Airlines physically cannot raise prices much because low-cost competitors will undercut them instantly, and they can't easily cut costs either because a huge share of their expenses, jet fuel, airport fees, aircraft leases, are fixed regardless of how many seats they sell. This is why the operating side of an airline, on its own, is one of the worst businesses you could choose to run.
The second business, the currency printer, is the part almost nobody thinks about, and it is where the real profit actually lives. Every major U.S. airline runs a loyalty program that, in practice, functions like a private currency. Airlines don't just give miles away to be nice. They sell miles in bulk to banks like American Express, Chase, and Citi, who then hand them out to credit card holders as rewards. The banks pay the airline real cash for every mile, whether or not that mile is ever redeemed for a flight. And the scale of this is staggering. Delta's co-branded partnership with American Express alone generated more than $8 billion in a single recent year, an amount close to 1.5 times Delta's entire adjusted operating income from actually flying planes. American Airlines took in over $6 billion from its card partnerships, roughly 4 times its operating income. United collected close to $3 billion from its arrangement with JPMorgan Chase. These aren't side hustles bolted onto an airline. For some carriers, they are effectively the entire company's profit, with the flying business attached as a cost center underneath it.
Here's the number that makes this undeniable. Analysts who strip loyalty revenue out of these airlines' books to see what's left find that almost none of the major U.S. carriers would be profitable without it. Without loyalty income, American Airlines' margin would be negative 8.3%. United would sit at negative 1.9%. Southwest, a carrier that built its entire brand on simple, no-frills flying, would be at a staggering negative 19.9%. In plain terms, if you removed the bank payments and left only ticket revenue, most of the largest airlines in America would be losing money on every single flight, every single day. Once you understand that, a lot of strange airline behavior stops being strange. It explains why airlines have restructured their mileage earning rules so that cardholders earn double or triple the miles of non-cardholders on every flight. The airline wants you spending on the co-branded card, not just flying the plane. It explains why elite status tiers reward frequent, expensive spending patterns as much as frequent flying. It explains why airlines have kept expanding partnerships, even as basic passenger experience, legroom, baggage fees, seat selection charges, has quietly gotten worse. The flying experience isn't the product being optimized anymore. The card spending behind it is.
This entire hidden structure was put to its most extreme test during the COVID-19 pandemic, And this is the moment that proves the loyalty program isn't just a side revenue stream, it's the actual load-bearing wall holding the airline industry up. When flights stopped almost entirely in 2020, airlines needed emergency cash immediately, the same way the cruise industry did. But airlines didn't raise that money by mortgaging their planes. They raised it by borrowing against the future cash flows of their loyalty programs, literally using their frequent flyer miles as loan collateral, the same way you might use a house as collateral for a mortgage. United raised $6.8 billion this way. Delta raised $9 billion. American raised $7.5 billion. In each case, the value investors assigned to the loyalty program alone, a database of points and bank contracts, not a single physical plane, was treated as more reliable collateral than the airline's actual fleet of aircraft. At one point during this period, some analysts estimated that the market was valuing the operating side of certain airlines, the planes, the routes, the crews, the gates, at close to zero. The only thing keeping these companies solvent enough to survive the shutdown was the bank-facing side of the business that most passengers don't even know exists.
That single fact should reframe how you think about every airline you've ever flown. The plane you boarded, the pilots who flew it, the gate agents who checked you in. From a pure balance sheet perspective, during the worst crisis in the industry's history, that entire operational apparatus was worth less to lenders than a rewards program. The wings keep the plane in the air. The credit card deal keeps the company in business. Passengers don't even know exists.
So, if this is where the real money is, why don't airlines just lean even harder into it? Or better yet, why hasn't some airline simply spun off the loyalty program as its own separate, wildly profitable company and let the flying side fend for itself? A few airlines have actually floated this idea, but there's a structural catch that makes it far riskier than it sounds. The loyalty program's entire value depends on the existence of flights to redeem miles for. If you strip the airline down to just the bank partnership, the miles become a currency with nothing to buy. Banks and cardholders only want airline miles because they're redeemable for actual seats on actual planes. Analysts have pointed out that separating the two is nearly impossible because the loyalty program and the airline give each other their value. Neither survives cleanly without the other. The flying business is unprofitable, but it's the thing that makes the profitable business possible. There's a second, more fragile problem sitting underneath all of this, and it's the reason this entire model qualifies as genuinely broken rather than just clever. The enormous payments banks make to airlines are ultimately funded by interchange fees, the small percentage banks charge merchants every time a card is swiped, a cost that gets quietly built into the price of almost everything you buy, whether you use a rewards card or not. In the United States, these fees are largely unregulated, which is exactly why the American airline loyalty model is so much more lucrative than loyalty programs run by European or Asian carriers, where interchange fees are capped by regulation. That means the entire multi-billion-dollar engine keeping U.S. airlines profitable is sitting on top of a regulatory loophole, not a durable business advantage. There is already proposed legislation in the U.S., the Credit Card Competition Act, aimed at slashing interchange fees by as much as 40%. If a law like that passes, it wouldn't just squeeze bank profits. It would rip out the specific financial mechanism that is currently the only thing keeping most major U.S. airlines out of the red.
That's the paradox sitting at the center of the airline industry today. The planes, the routes, the passengers, the entire visible apparatus of flying, that's not actually where these companies make their money anymore. It's the load-bearing wall that has to exist so a much more profitable, much less visible business can operate on top of it, selling a private currency to banks, who sell it to you so you'll keep flying planes that barely turn a profit on their own. The system works beautifully as long as three things hold steady at once. People keep flying enough to make the miles worth something, banks keep finding it profitable to buy those miles in bulk, and regulators keep leaving interchange fees alone. Pull out any one of those three supports, And an industry that just posted a record $41 billion in profit could find out very quickly how little of that profit was ever coming from the planes at all.